So, I think are there still people coming or? No, I think we will start. Good morning to everybody. I'm happy to chair this morning's session. There's quite a big interest for our topic. And I would say I would also ask, is it actually good that there is big interest for our questions? Because I would say this is also a sign for concern. And many of us are concerned about the rapid development in rule of law, human rights and democracy at European level. If you would look back 10 years, there was nothing like this being discussed outside of the circles of specialists, or maybe it had been discussed if some country wanted to become member of the European Union, but it was not at the core of the political debate. On the core of the political debate, there was economic questions, there was the question of growth, of stability, a question of competitiveness, things like this. And it looked like that Europe would face a kind of north-south divide, a divide along questions whether countries are performing in the way the north wants to perform them. But it was a divide between the north and the south on economic and social questions. Over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, we are facing a new divide or an additional divide. We are facing an east-west divide. And this divide is not also on social questions, of course, but it's also on ideological issues. And 2014, one of the heads of state of an eastern member state, Viktor Orban, was using the phrase illiberal democracy. And from this moment in 2014, this was a kind of virus going around Europe and mainly in the East European states. So we have a new challenge which is completely different to the challenges Europe was facing before. And the President of the Commission was delivering last plenary session in Strasbourg his State of the Union address, and he was using, I think, a very, very good picture. He said Europe has 2 lungs. One is the eastern lung and one is the western lung, and you can only survive with 2 lungs. And I think we should be concerned about the state of this eastern lung, because it's going more and more infected by a virus of nationalism. And this is not only applying to the eastern countries or the former Soviet countries, it is also now facing countries like the country I'm coming from. I come from Austria. We just had elections last weekend. And you can clearly see this viral infection which is actually taking space everywhere. There is one of the parties which will be soon the member of the government, the FPÖ, Freedom Party. They don't deserve this name, but they call them Freedom Party. They are talking about an Austrian Charter of Human Rights. So there is not any more universal human rights, there's Austrian human rights. Yeah? And the same kind of thinking is in Hungary, is in Poland, Slovakia, and in other parts of the East and also of the West. And I think what we are doing and what we try what we are aiming as a political family is to bring back the importance that human rights are indivisible, that human rights are universal, that there is no Hungarian or British or whatever version of human rights. So they are human rights on European and global level. We also prepared a kind of statement, and I invite you to use this, to read it, and this will be the starting point for our discussions. We know that we will be one of the most important players of this debate we really need in the next years. So I'm very happy that I have guests here on the podium. Frans Timmermans could not make it yesterday, and today he is engaged in other important issues. And we will be joined a little bit later by Victor Negrescu. He was a former member of European Parliament, and he is now the Minister for European Affairs in the Romanian government. His plane already arrived, and he will join us as soon as he can make it. So to my left, and the first speaker will be Michel Nicoletti. He's the chair of the Socialists, Democrats and Greens, Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. Council of Europe is in many cases important because it's the bigger Europe, and it is, I think, also important because the core debate on human rights was actually started from the Council of Europe and not from the European Parliament. So this is actually for us a very important legacy we have to rediscover again. And to my right is Barbara Nowacka. She comes from Poland, and we follow her and her activities on many different levels and channels, and she's, I think, one of the leading figures of this new Europe, of this Europe where citizens are raising their voice and where citizens are bringing back the European project to us politicians. So I'm also very happy that you are joining us. And next to me is Teresa Vázquez López. She is the ambassador, and she will take the notes, and she will then also make the report on this first session, and we will follow it closely. And I will then introduce the other guests when we are coming to the second round. So we are starting now with 2 or maybe 3 contributions. It depends on whether Victor can make his way or not. And we'll ask you, Michel, to start with your contribution. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good morning to everybody. I'm really very happy to be here and to have the opportunity to discuss with you about how to defend and strengthen democracy, the rule of law and fundamental rights in Europe. As have been said, I'm the head of the Socialists, Democrats and Green Group at the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, and the 3 pillars of our institution, which is born 1949, It is the most ancient European institution, are precisely these three pillars, human rights, democracy, and rule of law. And actually, the Council of Europe include 47 member states, and not only Europe, but what we say pan-Europe, including Russia and Turkey, the Caucasian area, and all the Eastern Europe and Balkans, and so on. And all these 800 millions of people are protected by the European Convention of Human Rights and by the European Court in Strasbourg. Of course, there are a lot of contradictions in many countries. There are also a lot of violations, but it is important to recognize the importance of these institutions for this 800 million of citizens. And the basic idea of the European Court of Human Rights is precisely what our chair said at the beginning. Because Europe, after the tragedy of the Second World War, of the totalitarianism and so on, decided that the human rights need a special protection, not only national protection, but supranational protection. And all these countries decided to establish a supranational court. And this is a very important idea. Human rights is not something which is at a disposal of the government of one single nation, and nobody can speak of Hungarian or Austrian or Italian human rights. Human rights are universal. So I would like just to give you three short messages. The first one is that when we as socialists and democrats speak of human rights, it is very important to say immediately we want to protect and defend human rights in the unity and indivisibility. This means that we cannot divide civil rights from social rights. If you read the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from the United Nations, it is very clear that freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, and so on are in the same charter like the right to work or right to social security and so on. And one of the mistakes of our Europe is that we gave the privilege to some rights, sometimes not even to the rights of people, but to the rights of goods, instead of considering the right of people in their indivisibility. And in the Council of Europe, we have two fundamental conventions, the European Convention of Human Rights, 1950, and the European Social Rights Charter. And I really hope, and every member state of the Council of Europe has the obligation to respect and implement both this convention. So when we are now preparing the social pillar of the European Union, I would say that I would really recommend to mention all this convention in that place, because it is not only a question to say, okay, also the Council of Europe has a convention, but it's a question that this is a legal obligation of all the 28 or 27 member states of the European Union to respect and implement both the convention, human rights and social rights. Second message about rule of law. There are violation of the rule of law now. We will listen to our Polish colleague after myself, and in the Council of Europe, of course, there is a lot of concern about what is happening in Poland, Hungary, Turkey, of course, and Russia as well, related to the independence of judiciary, especially independence of constitutional court. And rule of law is one of the pillars of this building of protection of human rights and democracy. And rule of law means also not only division or balancing of power, but also fighting against corruption. Fighting against corruption. This is another crucial issue for our political family, because corruption is really a cancer for the rule of law, for democracy. And I think that one of the reasons of this increasing populism in our countries, of the no confidence in representative democracy, is also due to this idea that the elite are corrupted and so on. And we have to make any effort in order to strengthen the rule of law, also in fighting corruption. The third idea is democracy, and I really think that is a great idea that our socialist and democratic family is committed in strengthening the democracy at a European level with this Spitzenkandidat and this primaries process and so on. It is absolutely important that we implement this process. But at the same time, I would say that democracy is not only election. Democracy is discussion before deciding. And we need to implement also all the instruments and the places for deliberative democracy. We have to give room to rationality in politics. In parliaments, we need to discuss, to consider the different arguments, and then to decide. And this is something that maybe we have a bit forget, but was typical of the creation of democracy in the old Greece, and typical of our tradition. And democracy is not only to be democratically elected, but also to use the power in a certain way. And so it is a question of accountability, transparency, responsiveness, and so on. Only if we are able to implement democracy on the side of election, on the side of deliberation, on the side of accountability, we can have a proper and functioning democracy. So I think that this can be an important contribution that our political family can give to our citizens and to all our continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michel. And I think it's important to stress that democracy is not only institutions, it is also exchange of arguments and raising concerns and using the brains and not the elbows. And in some parts of Europe, it became popular to use the elbows instead of brain. Barbara, is this happening in your country? That people are sometimes just get lost in their exercise of their masculinity and showing that they are strong. And what do you think about this development?
I do. Sorry.
Julia.
Yeah, sorry, I do have microphone. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's a great pleasure to talk about Poland, maybe from different perspective than we got used to, because what you usually see from our side is right-wing government shouting on Europe, presenting how strong we are, and as Federica Mogherini cleverly marked yesterday, sometimes a person who is tough for being tough is just very weak one. And this is the problem of our government, that on the European level they're extremely weak and they're not playing European games at all. They're playing games of internal politics without understanding what European Union is and without sharing European values that should be universal. And as Joe rightly said, we are in a very historical moment of the EU, because EU transforms. We've already seen some transformation, especially 2004 with a big enlargement, but the atmosphere of that transformation was totally different. We were looking brightly for a Europe of prosperity, Europe of Europe that was about being united, being together, whereas at the moment, thinking about transformation of Europe, especially in the Eastern Europe, we are afraid. We are afraid that for us, that might be the beginning of the end of a European project. We are afraid that what we believed while we were working for Poland joining EU is just at the moment now being completely destroyed. It's not only about us, it's also Brexit as a tendency, which is showing not only the feelings of the society, but the internal problems of understanding European Union as such. Right-wing populism is not a phenomenon of Eastern European countries. Unfortunately, it's now everywhere. And it's very strong in Germany, it's extremely strong in France as a part of a discourse. The other questions we have concerning crisis of values, crisis of identities, crisis with employment and fear of losing jobs. These are the questions that European Union at the moment, at this moment of transition, is posing. So this very moment is not as optimistic as it was in 2004, which for me, living that day in the UK, using the opportunity of being part of Erasmus project and working also abroad, was one of the brightest moments of my life. And now we as Poles, we can be very disturbed with present development, because we feel Europeans, and majority of my generation do feel as strong Europeans as we feel strong Poles. And maybe this is something that keeps us still fighting against right-wing government, is this feeling of belonging to a bigger, wider family. And I think we will spend all our energy as a civil society in Poland, women's movement, green movement, we'll spend all our energy to give the message to the European Union that no matter what will happen with the European Union, we belong to this community and we want to stay as a part of the community. The question is this community is a really existing one at the moment? We do repeat that we should be together, and looking at the laws and regulations that the European Union has, are we really together? Especially look at the concept of women's rights. Is European Union at the moment really helping women to achieve equal status than men? Of course, there are many policies, special funds, resources, programs to empower women, to make them stronger, make us more visible, more active in politics, have more access to education. Thus, for example, reproductive rights are given to the national states. And the European Union is clearly sending a message that a part of distributing money for projects, European Union will not fight for a values of equality. Gender pay gap is existing. It's an existing problem every one of us, women, is facing. Then access to education to certain professions is still questioned. And very often, I find that women's rights are less important than religious beliefs. And here, as a woman, as a citizen of the European Union, I would need Europe to have a stronger voice, to make us being really together, not to fight for, not to say that we fight for values, but to implement those values in real life. That's why I believe that the moment that the European Union is changing can be also a positive chance for women to, and for other groups that are at the moment not equally treated, to make a positive progress, a positive change that is needed. Because women are just one of the examples. Same with asking if Europe is very helpful at the debate we have right now about rule of law. Yes, our government is violating constitution. That's the truth. What kind of mechanism the European Union can really take apart of shouting on our government? This shouting is not helpful. It's just opening the debate between pro-Europeans and nationalists. And as far as European Union is not strong enough to take serious measures against governments that are violating rule of law, not only in Poland, that are violating democracy, that are sending police to Protestants in some countries, as we saw 2 weeks ago. If European Union is not taking serious, strong and equivalent measures, we will not win the battle of European Union of being strong and together. And what happened in Spain recently was a strong argument for Polish right-wing government, because European Union stood silent or not well heard enough about the topic of Spain and Catalan, whereas was very strong about Poland. This is a part of narrative that right-wing will use against us and against European Union, saying that we are still as a different category of members of European Union. So as long as we are not equal in measures, in policies, there was also mention very important about corruption. Yes, we have to fight corruption, but European Union, if we want to be clear on fighting corruption, should start with fight corruption within the European Union institutions. Without this, it wouldn't be credible to go to citizens and criticize countries and citizens for allowing corruption if the problem starts from the top of European Union. These are the reforms European Union should take, reforms based on values, and take them very restrictively. We need to, what is obvious at the moment is that there is no chance for real debate on values, on common European project of being together between European Union and a government like Polish or Hungarian one. They are not interested in this debate. Thus, societies are interested. And this dialogue between or among parties, among our family, among NGOs, must be kept. We know that European Union is changing. There are 3 possible scenarios of change. One is complete devastation of European Union, where the project will actually face its end, and some countries will be still trading very closely, but common values, togetherness, will be completely over. The second scenario is that Europe will stay as it is. Maybe 2 different speeds, maybe some countries will have more links, but still Europe will not transform to more transparent, will be as it is. So, not satisfactory for us. And the second scenario, very positive one, is the one that brought us here, is a scenario where democracy, rule of law, and fundamental rights are not the slogans, are implemented in the law. Justice and equality are not repeated by politicians, but are part of the policies. And this Europe that will be strong together depends on us, the progressive forces. We have to question status quo. We have to demand more, not only on the field of women's rights, not only on the field of being restrictive to keep the constitution and values we already have, but asking for new values, asking for more equality on the labor market, asking for more justice on the labor market, asking for, demanding for respect for fundamental rights that are written in many charts, but were hung out by governments, very often also by social democratic governments, while they were ruling. It's very easy to criticize when you are out of parliament. We are out of parliament, so we can criticize government. But being out of mainstream, it's sometimes very comfortable because you can work with civil society and you can build the trust. And that's what we are fighting for. I know that this change of European Union, because of our governments, because of situation around, because of the rise of nationalism, can lead Poland to the second, third speed of European Union. What I would like to send you as a message is, no matter what will happen, Polish citizens will join this group sooner or later. I believe sooner, but this group we want to return to. We would prefer to be more just, more open, more equal, more social. Better Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. And I think I was taking part in these demonstrations in the end of September last year, the Gianni protest in Warsaw, and the really moving part of it was that so many people were taking European flags and European symbols with them. So for them, their protest was also linked with the European project. And I think this was, for me, the message I got from the East, where I thought, yes, we cannot be silent.
And I really, if I may add, I really appreciate the fact that also here in Brussels and here in European Parliament and in many other countries, people were protesting in a gesture of solidarity with Poles that are under the threat that will go to prison for miscarriage. As simple as that, so that women's rights will not be respected at all. And this gesture of solidarity was very strong. And I think this is also the way we have to work as societies. Not only on debates, but on strong actions of support. For us, it was massive and it was extremely important. Thanks to black protests, we have now in Poland very strong feminist movement. In a conservative Christian Catholic country, it's a huge surprise. But it wouldn't happen without having in mind that European Union has values, and these are the values we can call as an example. So anyway, thank you for the support of our black protest from last year, and this year, or maybe in the beginning of January, we will have the same wave of fight with right-wingers and Christian conservatives in Parliament and probably on the streets.
Thank you very much. Victor, are you ready now to join in? Then, because it would be good if we complete the round of politicians and then give the floor to the audience. Or
I can do it now.
So we are happy that he arrived finally.
Yeah, I just came in from Romania. So first of all, hello to all of you, and I will start by thanking the organizers for doing this big event in the last couple of days, yesterday and today. It really proves that it's important for us to debate about the future of Europe and also to debate about what we can do together. And I would like to thank Joseph for basically moderating this important debate about common values. Because indeed we have to speak about common values and we have to speak openly about common values. I think this is an important role that our socialist and democratic family could play at European level to generate such a debate. Because if we want to speak about the future of Europe, of course, we have to speak about our identity, our common identity, and of course try to identify what is our common identity beyond what is actually mentioned and what is mentioned in the treaties. And it's quite well that we have a reference to our common ideas, common ideals as well in the same time. So, of course, it's important for the socialist families to initiate such a debate, to discuss frankly and openly about what can unite us in the European Union, to discuss about democracy, rule of law, fundamental rights. But, of course, I'm not here to give lessons. I think for the last couple of years, we were giving too many lessons instead of listening to each other, instead of speaking to each other, in order to identify, first of all, what are our common values in our family, and after that, be strong when defending those values in front of those that do not share our beliefs. I think if we start listening again to each other, we may be stronger as a socialist family. And it's important to underline this fact because today, more than ever, we need unity. We need unity of our socialist family, and we need to speak frankly about those values and what we can do together. Speak about the different experiences and the different problems that we are facing. Speak about them quite openly, and I'm going to do so also in my intervention today without being afraid of touching maybe also topics that may be worrying for someone like me, which is a true progressive, but in the same time to ask you all to discuss and support each other when it comes to the most pressing issues. So going back to values, of course, I have to go back to the treaties. And in the treaties, we have reference to different values: solidarity, cohesion, respect for human dignity, democracy, freedoms, rule of law, tolerance, diversity, anti-discrimination, equal chances. A lot of them are mentioned there. And sometimes we tend to forget. We tend to forget that they are at the basis of the fundamental basis of the European Union as it is today. And of course, we sometimes refer to them in our speeches, in our political speeches, because they sound well, they sound nice, it's good to refer to them. But beyond speaking about values, we have to give them content. And I think one of the biggest responsibility of the socialist family across Europe is to give content to those values. But what do I mean by content? It's basically building concrete policies that will underline the importance of those values, and at the same time will give value to values, which is also something quite important to underline. So if we refer to solidarity, which I mentioned first, of course, we need solidarity when we refer to migration and how we deal with the migration issues at European level. And of course, we have to speak openly about it, the worries, the threats, the difficulties of each member state in order to find common solutions. And I have to say that in the last couple of weeks on this matter, even between East and West, there are more and more synergies, and we have to speak frankly about it in order to identify solutions. But also solidarity appears during crises, like for instance today in Portugal with the forest fires. I think it's important to speak about that, not simply leave that to Portugal to handle it on its own. We have to be there, we have to be present, we have to participate. And of course, participating doesn't mean simply telling our Portuguese friends that they can apply for a European fund. This is not solidarity. Solidarity means actually sending people there, experts there, in fighting against fire. Of course, speaking openly about it and making, of course, access to resources in an efficient and fast way. Another value is cohesion. Of course, cohesion doesn't sound so cool anymore. It's like something that it's only some people should speak about. But cohesion speaks about reducing the development gaps existing at European level, reducing the inequalities that exist at European level. And we have inequalities within member states and between member states, within regions, between regions. You have less developed regions in Western Europe and less developed regions in Eastern Europe. It's not about a division between East and West. It's about making the European Union work at full speed with both lungs, which is something quite important. We have to speak about that. Speaking about human dignity is also something that maybe we should refer to more often. Human dignity is a value that is mentioned in the treaties. And of course, again, policies. What do we do about the poor energy consumers? What do we do about food waste? What do we do about all of those things in the policies that we are promoting at European level together? And of course, we have to speak frankly about that. Again, going back to what is are the core elements reflected in the debate today, democracy. Today, we have to speak about what is the current democracy and how we perceive the future of European democracy. How we ensure financial independence of the media in today's world. How do we fight against fake news? How do we want to get elected to get the European Parliament to get elected next? Do we agree with transnationalists or we do not agree? Because I can tell you frankly, we discussed at the PS level between member states, where I saw some defending transnationalists, I saw others not saying anything, but disagreeing in the council afterwards. I took the floor and I said to my colleagues, before the council, where we disagreed among each other as socialists, that maybe we should speak frankly and openly to see whether we agree on this topic or not. But it's important to speak about, and again, discussions and debates are important. Going back to freedoms, freedom of movement, freedom to work in another member state, Schengen, going back to Schengen. Today, Schengen is blocked. It's blocked sometimes also with support from different governments. And again, Schengen is a basic freedom. It's something that brings together European member states, and today is put under question. Rule of law. Rule of law without balance of powers truly exists. This is also something that needs to be discussed. But it's clear that transparency is needed. And the Commission, in my opinion, can play an important role in ensuring the respect of rule of law across Europe. And I can tell you that I come from a country that has the CVM mechanism. Only Romania and Bulgaria have a mechanism for the implementation and respect of the rule of law. Other countries do not have it. We have it for 10 years now. Of course, it's not easy to discuss about that, but it's good that it exists. That for 10 years, my country and Bulgaria are discussing openly with the Commission on this topic, sometimes doing good measures, sometimes not doing what we should do, but we are in a conversation. Other countries, and it was mentioned earlier, one of the countries in Eastern Europe, doesn't discuss about the rule of law. But also we have countries in Western Europe or in North Europe or South Europe that do not discuss openly about the rule of law with the Commission and say the Commission doesn't have any intervention of the rule of law. In our case, we believe the Commission can play a positive role if we have a conversation, and with our Commissioner, Frans Timmermans, I can tell you that the conversations are very fruitful, positive, and engaging and constructive in order to ensure the creation or the respect of the rule of law. I can refer, of course, to the others: tolerance, anti-discrimination, respect for diversity. Everything is important, but what's important today, and I'm going to underline what I said at the beginning, is that we need a true debate. And Romania is going to have the presidency of the European Union Council at the beginning of 2019. And as a minister, I'm in charge of the preparation of this presidency. And I can tell you at the core of our presidency, we'll have an active debate about values. We want to generate a debate about values, discussing with everyone. This debate should not be about an elite speaking about values, but should be about an open debate with all European citizens. East, West, North, South, rural, urban, richer, poorer, women, men, young, old. Is about involving everyone if you really want to have a common idea on values. And I'm sure today, of course, I can discuss about that, and I'm sure there are questions. And I will discuss frankly about those issues as well, because Joseph was mentioning that I'm out of time already. But during the answers, I'm going to give you more details about where we need your support and how we can engage together. So my call to you, let's debate about it and be active and go where people are to discuss about our values. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victor. And I will just ask two people to make intervention. We do not ask you to raise questions. So it would be if someone wants to make a comment or a suggestion, you are welcome. I will take two people from the audience, and we have this mic. So yeah, I was trying to throw that into the audience, but then I have no mic here anymore. But so. Okay, so we take two, and yeah, if you introduce yourself. And
yeah, I'm Donia Asimi from Sweden. And I found your point of view really interesting, and it's really interesting to listen to the points mentioned, as well as the problems in Europe, how we can change them. And I also heard a lot of criticism about the situation and how it's being handled, especially from you, within the Europe. And I was wondering, in a room full of young people, do you have any suggestions on how a young person like me could affect or change the problems in more practical ways? Perhaps an issue about women's rights. My work field is children's rights specifically, and I would really much like to hear, in a more practical way, how I can influence in Sweden, where I'm from, or in Europe, where I've been working for a few years, more practical ways.
Thank you very much. Second intervention, yes, please, in the back. Yeah.
Yes, hello. My name is Professor Linson from the MNRC. I think we are also here to exchange experiences. I've read through your tasty statements regarding the rule of law, respecting democracy, etc., etc. I don't know. Regarding respecting the law, I mean, you are mentioning Poland, Turkey, Hungary. How about Flanders? Because I and my family come from the French-speaking minority. We are based in Flanders, and we have suffered enormously because of the politico-linguistic apartheid and ostracism. The case shall be brought before the European Court of Human Rights. Now, what I would like to say is that we turn to the European institutions, organizations for civic rights, civil societies, and so forth, politicians, and no one lifted a finger. So as far as I'm concerned, well, I don't believe in European institutions and politicians anymore as structured. So if you want to have my trust again, I would suggest that you first overcome my prevailing suspicion and recover my trust and respect. Otherwise, it's not just me, it's for many other citizens too, you shall fail. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would suggest that we come back to your questions in the final round then, and I would invite as next speakers from FEPS, Maria, Freitas, and then Collier to complete the picture, and then we come back to these questions. So, Maria.
Thank you, Mr. Weidenholzer. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're as happy as I am to be here today to discuss such an important issue and to look the ways in which we as progressives can be the ones at the forefront of strengthening European democracy. And on behalf of FEPS, the Foundation for European Progressive Studies, I would like to obviously thank the S&D Group, Europe Together, and our progressive family for the opportunity to provide some input to this topic. My contribution for today's debate will be focused on youth, on millennials, because I think that it's also very, very important that we shed some light as to what the millennial generation is expecting. What are the values, the aspirations of this generation? What are they expecting from us progressives? I'm a millennial. We have millennials in the audience. We have millennials here at the stage. But perhaps it's also best that I define this concept for those of you who don't know who millennials are and how they are defined. So millennials are those aged between 15 to 35, born between 1918 and 2000. We, millennials, we are the most hyped and talked about generation that there is. We're called the digital natives. We were the ones we've grown into the economic crisis, and we actually were faced with several economic hardships, and not even to mention very, very difficult transitions from school to the labor markets. For employers, we millennials are defined as people with lots of ideals, with unrealistic expectations. We tend even to be seen as a managerial challenge. For businesses, we are defining marketing strategies, and we are actually being assessed on how can we actually galvanize this generation. For the media, how many times have we heard that we millennials are lazy and apathetic? And for politics, we are often described as uninterested and that we simply do not vote. And it was this incomprehension about the expectations of this generation that prompted FEPS and partners all over the world to listen to millennial voices, to 23,000 millennial voices, and to get some insights on what drives millennial engagement, and most importantly, how we could build a dialogue between the progressive family, a long-lasting dialogue between the progressive family and the millennial generation. But for FEPS, it was also very important to myth-bust this negative narrative that is being attributed to that generation. So what have we learned? We learned that there are indeed some challenges to millennial engagement, but when we asked millennials, well, why are you distancing yourself from politics? And millennials told the following to FEPS. They told three things. They said that they were disappointed with broken promises and lack of trust towards politics of today and political systems. They were disappointed as well towards career-seeking politicians that do not listen and do not care about their issues and concerns, and the inability of politics to relate with young people. This obviously has led to the consequence that we do see that there's millennial engagement. We are very, very engaged. We are loud. But then again, we are participating in politics, and we are participating in democracy outside of traditional structures. And obviously, this distancing also means that they're distancing themselves from us, from progressives. But how can we, as progressives, tap into this potential? How can we, progressives, empower millennials and build together a stronger movement at the national, at the European level, and by doing so, strengthening European democracy? We have 10 recommendations at FEPS. I will just show you here the reports. So here we have the Millennial Dialogue reports, which we conducted in 23 countries all over the world. And then we have here the FEPS study with 10 recommendations, which I will not elaborate on the 10, only 3. And it's called The Future Starts Now. So, for millennials, progressives need to be more creative in open, participatory channels where millennials are seen as team players, as equals, and they're treated as such in the intra-party debates and internal decision-making. And the answer is therefore, and this was said before, political structure reform. And this could be done, for example, by e-voting, smart voting, online deliberations, and why simply not having millennial politicians. And by empowering millennials to be co-decisors in several policy issues. It's also a positive framework that already exists at the European level, but nevertheless should be strengthened at all levels, local, national, and European. A stronger emphasis should be given to this. And I also think that this is important to convey that FEPS study actually shows that millennials are still very enthusiastic about the welfare state. I think that this is important with regards to the progressive policy framework. And this shows, yet again, against prejudice, that millennials are favorable for an active welfare state on social security, social investment, healthcare, education, job creation, equality. These were the issues that millennials said that they're concerned. Now it's up really for progressives to show that they deliver on these dimensions, and this was also mentioned by Victor. It's giving content to the values and show that we deliver progressive policies. Last but not least, what I would really, really like for you to retain from the millennial talk here today is that millennials are a progressive, internationalist, and most importantly, pro-European generation, but we are currently feeling alienated from politics and contemporary political systems. It was mentioned here by Michele. Yes, it is important that millennials participate in democracy, not only in elections, but throughout the deliberations, participate in decisions. Barbara, I do agree. Where's the optimism? Where's the optimism with regards to the European project? Why not look at the millennials? Why not look at how supportive we are? As Joseph said, we do wave European flags and we do believe in the European project. So I do believe that it's high time for progressives to give this new opening, to empower us as a generation, because this way, and therefore, together, we would build a stronger social Europe, and why not, a more millennial one. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We will have, after our session, we will have a guest who was especially addressing the millennials and who had the backing of the millennials and who was fighting for the welfare state. And this was Jeremy Corbyn. So you see, some people already take up your ideas. So the next speaker is Aurélien Massu. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Already I'm a board member of Rainbows. Rainbows is the LGBTI network of the Social Democrats. We have structures all over Europe, and we're working with our political family at both European and national level. First of all, I'd like to thank again the S&D Group for having us as a partner of the Together. We were there when there was the launch event in Brussels, and we're happy to be back on stage and to talk about human rights and LGBTI rights, actually. We are very proud that our family in general has done a lot and is still delivering a lot. And I'd like here to highlight the fact that the S&D Group in 2016 adopted its LGBTI roadmap, which we see in the declaration. And this is something very important as well, to have clearly stated what are our values, what we need to do. And then it's time to deliver, and we're also happy that in 2017 the Party of European Socialists adopted a similar roadmap that each of our sister parties and organizations adopted, and we are very happy that now we got some common grounds in our political family to work together and deliver together. When it comes to Poland, Hungary, well, our political family denounce what is happening, and actually it's just destroying all the society. There is no more counterpower media, free media don't exist. It's just destroying all NGO. It's not only LGBTI rights. It's very, it's destroying all counterpower, and there we really need to be there all together and denounce strongly what's going on. Maybe we have been too shy on some countries, and now when it happens the case of Poland, now the case is like, okay, maybe we haven't been not strong enough on Hungary, so now what to do with Poland? That's the question, but for us it's still quite easy as well to denounce the situation in these two countries because we are not in power. But as well, as it was mentioned, we need to be frank toward each other and what's going on within our own political family. And here, I mean, I must talk about some situation that we raised, and we had the support of some of our political parties, you know, to say, what are our values, what are we doing on LGBTI rights from the Social Democrats, from the Progressive. We had the case of Slovakia, we had the EU presidency, where there is still nothing on legal protection of same-sex couples. In country Romania, there will be a referendum soon, so that will be very interesting to know what's the position of our party in the definition of marriage. I hope that we could get an answer there. And in some other countries. And here I'd like as well to bring something, because sometimes we are said, oh, but you know, we got this East versus West divide, we come from different cultural backgrounds, we can't go as quick as we would like. And I don't believe in it, because within our own political family, we have also great examples in different parts of Europe where our political family did deliver, did stick to its political commitments and our common values. So I don't buy this too easy argument saying, well, this is the West versus East and we can't do anything. We can still do a lot, maybe not do the same things, but we can still deliver a lot. And it's also political courage, and also about question about religion. Yes, religion can be a factor that could sometimes prevent to deliver quickly on LGBTI rights. But also, if you have political courage, you can deliver. Look at Malta. Now Malta is #1 in terms of LGBTI rights in Europe. And I don't think it's one of the less religious countries. So I think it's time also for us to wake up and really deliver, and also show to all the political family that, yeah, we are standing for common values and we can deliver as the political family. When asked about what we can do as young people or as citizens, I think that something is to remind our values every day to your colleagues, to your friends. When there is something that you don't agree with, also remind, like whether it's derogatory comments on women, for instance, or about someone being LGBTI. This is something that we can do every day, and as well try to ask questions to our own politicians and be active, and let them know what we want to do, but also being visible as diverse politicians, and having some openly LGBTI politicians could be something as well important. So this is what Rainbow Rose is trying to promote. And then when we are discussing about fundamental rights, human rights, just in 2 days, on the 21st of October, is going to be the International Day for Depatholization for trans people. And trans people are still suffering a lot, and they're still facing inhuman treatment, even within the European Union, with like forced sterilization to get into legal gender recognition. And it's still happening today in a lot of countries, not only in Eastern countries, also in Western countries. So this is something that we all have to fight for, and I really hope that as Progressive Family we will deliver quickly on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aurélien. And we are very happy to have you as a part of our family, and also to show that you are part of our family. And you are certainly right that there are different developments, but we have to, I think we have to be European and overcoming possible divides. Yeah? So there is not a divide that Eastern Europeans are different from Western Europeans. This would be stupid. But I think we have to take them, everybody, as a European citizen. And there is, of course, the right of LGBTI persons a very important aspect. And in some countries, we really observe very, very dangerous tendencies. I'm sure that Victor will also come back to this question. I would now like to invite our friends from School of Democracy. We have 5 people here who wants to take the floor. School of Democracy is, I think, one of the most important developments we made in this mandate, that we decided to invest into the future of young people. This is maybe a little bit an answer to our Swedish colleague. We really believe that it is up to the next generation to take up the legacy of the social democratic family and of the labor movement. So I think this was a good investment, and everybody of us is very happy to take part in the School of Democracy. So who of you wants to take the floor? Anna? Yeah? You want to? I would also invite you, if you want to come up, it makes it easy. Okay? You have to, pose is a bit... you have to...
Anyway, from my perspective, the most important thing is to educate people about democracy. For example, in Croatia, where I come from, people don't know their own strength. In matters regarding the European Union, only a small percentage of people want to participate in any way. Sure, they have the means to participate, everything is online and easy to access, but maybe just 10% of young people will open a certain website or take an initiative even, which is awful, not only for young people, but for all European society, since the European Union is making rules by which we live. First thing we have to do is to try to work on mainstreaming the European politics in everyday speech by our politicians and also activists. Because for citizens, Europe is way too abstract, especially European politics. Make it more to the ground in member states and literally pull the people by their sleeves to come and join us in building a society they want to live in. When people contribute, everything begins to make sense. Discussions make sense, and also decisions make sense. We need to show them democracy and make them use it, because democracy needs people, and it's made for the people also. It is very, very important not to let people use democratic tools to promote undemocratic values. For example, that was the thing in Croatia. We had a referendum on same-sex marriages, and maybe even we will have the referendum on abortion soon. Hopefully not. But anyway, I think those are the questions that we need to answer today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a bit difficult with the mic, but so we can also give you another mic because. So who else wants to take the floor? Ilona? Thank you. Yeah, because no, for the people in the audience, because you have the big thing and you have your notes. For me, it's okay. Was it okay for you? For you, it was a bit difficult to.
Maybe a bit, yeah, but not that much.
Okay, so Next, who wants to take the floor from our participants of School of Democracy? Ilona?
Here's the second one. No,
Okay, super. Yeah. Fine.
So I'm here to introduce the School of Democracy. It's a youth organization from the S&D, and the S&D invites 100 people each year to Reggio Emilia to participate in workshops for 4 days. And there are a lot of speakers, a lot of MEPs, to kind of improve the conversation and discussion between different countries and young, passionate people. So my question right now from the School of Democracy is, because you mentioned that democracy isn't just voting, it's also thinking at the discussion. So in many countries there are thoughts about introducing the subject of politics in schools to teach young people to think critically and to have a discussion, because the rise of right-wing populism isn't just because the people or young people are not voting, it's because they are not having a proper discussion. Because what we see in TV debates is that the politics is just a show, or more of a show than a discussion. And I think we should teach young people to think critically and have a discussion. And do you think that if we teach young people how to think critically, that the rise of right-wing populism wouldn't be that high or could be stopped?
Thank you. You note that question, please. Who else wants to take the floor from School of Democracy? Yes. You can join us, please. Yeah.
Okay.
Makes it much easier.
Hello.
Yes, please.
So, hi everyone, I'm Ilona Sorri from Finland, and I have one point that you were talking about, and this is also a question. I think we should also, the problem, for example, in Finland is that we are one of the least corrupted countries in the world, and we have pretty well-working democracy, but the thing is that people aren't voting. I think it's that they are taking the, democracy as it is just there, and they don't appreciate it enough. And I feel like it's a trend that is going on in Europe at the moment, that young people aren't voting enough. We've seen this in Brexit and everywhere. So, and this is also happening in Finland. So what would you say, how can we get more young people voting and people in general? Because democracy can't work if people aren't willing to participate in it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who wants to take the floor? Yes? Two more, and then we are coming back on the floor, yeah? Okay.
Hi, do you hear me? Okay. So I'm Alexandra. I'm actually Polish, a Polish Malay, I would say. And I feel like we're not paying enough attention to really talking about them, not us, because we already persuaded. And I feel like there is no exchange of views anymore between us, because we just stuck in two camps. It's us and it's them. We're really divided. And I feel like, do you see any solutions, how to talk to those who already turned in Poland, for example, to the propaganda, to the conservative propaganda in Poland, how to close those divisions and how to talk to each other, which language to use, what tools to use, because for now I feel like we're just stuck. There was a wall there and they don't want to listen. So do you have any ideas on that? And second part of my question would be, since I feel like as much as we criticize here from Brussels what's happening back in Poland, I feel like how to not use, I would say, give our government new tools to build negative narrative about European Union for Polish citizens back in the country, but still be strong and criticize their actions. I don't know if there is any solution to that, but if you have one, you'd be my hero, so thank you.
Thank you. Next, behind, yeah, thank you.
Hello, I'm working for a young political organization, JAF Europe, and when talking about youth participation, you seem to find that like digital participation is like the only way and it's going to change everything, and like, but having just organized a seminar on digital democracy, I think like this is not like the amazing solution that is going to revolution everything. So yeah. And second point, also, you're talking about rule of law and democracy, and that's really great because you do have a gender balance panel, so that's a good point. And you talked about LGBTQI issue, which is like another great point. But what about diversity? Because the hashtag is Europe Together, and I mean, European are not like all white and with a Christian background or whatever. I mean, religion is not the matter, but like, what about diversity in your framework of thought and stuff? Because like even yesterday, like there was only white people talking and no diversity at all.
Thank you. I could take one more. Yes, please.
So I'm also from the School of Democracy, but I do work with children's rights on the side, and I'm really passionate about the fact that children also have something to say about the law as well, and I'm trying to get more young people and children involved in the rule of law and in the making of the decisions that involves mostly their lives, actually, because once the law is set, it will take a few years in order for it to really come into practice. And I was wondering, how do you think that, what kind of democracy do we have if we don't involve children, and if we don't have like young people under the 18, perhaps in this room? And do you think it's a problem that we need to work on, or do you just, are you happy with the fact that we do have a school of democracy over 18, or the youngest person we have is actually Leona, and she's only 18, so what's your children's point of view in this whole question?
Thank you very much. I think we have enough for the final round. I would start with Aurélie and Maria, and then with our guest. You are completely right, and I think this was always part of the labor movement to give children a right to say and to start with democracy at a very early age. Yeah? And you may be right that we sometimes forget about this. But it is part of the values of our families that children are human beings at the same level as adults, and they even need more attention and more space for developing their democratic behavior. So, Aurélie, Maria.
Yeah, thank you.
Something like 10 minutes.
I'll be very brief, and actually my common answer to all the question is working together. I mean, as an LGBT organization within our political family, we're working very closely with all our sister organizations, including the Young European Socialists, including PES Women, including FEPS, including Solidar. This is also a way to increase diversity, and we are bringing this issue and trying also to indeed raise that we need to reflect society. We're far from being perfect, and it's also good that you're raising the topic, and I do believe that it's up to each organization as well to be together and put that on the table. And so far, we have very great collaboration with all organizations. So this is also something that we try to encourage our member at national level to do it as well, because then we are here, the European family, but as well, it's based on the national parties, and this is also where things need to change. And also for that, we also need at local, regional, and national level the support of activists to also bring these topics and say, yeah, we need to be more diverse, we need to work together among our own political family, but as well with all the civil society. So I think this is something that we need to keep on going, because indeed there's still a way to go on that. And about LGBTI youth is also a huge issue that we're working very closely with, especially young European socialists. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you very much for your interventions and questions. And also, I think that I'm thankful to be here with all of you because the input provided was so inspiring. To speak about voter turnout and to speak about millennial engagement in national elections, European elections, it's always a bit complicated. This is as well what I tried to outline in my intervention, is that the relationship is complicated. We see that there is engagement, we see that there's willingness to engage, we see that there's enthusiasm, but then perhaps something awkward happens when the moment comes to go to the ballot box and cast your vote. It simply doesn't seem something exciting to do. So I think that we as progressives need to make it exciting. How? By proposing a positive agenda, by proposing an agenda that links to the aspirations and the expectations that the millennial generation is having towards us. And in a way, the bridge is already there. The millennials, the young people, are a progressive generation. They're ready to engage. They do identify with the progressive framework. We just need to make the link that these progressive policies, these values, are coming from us, from our family. And with regards to the question on digital participation, it is a way, I agree, it's not the magic bullet that will solve millennial participation in politics, but it's definitely a way to accelerate and bring us there. Thank you.
Thank you. Victor, I was a bit unjust to you, and so...
Yeah, of course, and I'm gonna start with the with youth, because I was one of the youngest members of the European Parliament, and now I'm the youngest Minister of European Affairs in Europe. So therefore, I feel concerned about, of course, young people, because I'm a young person myself as well. So of course, what I don't like when we refer to young people is that we put them in a group and say they are all the same. They are millennials, they are the X generation, they are the Y generation, they are a group, united group. But as a matter of fact, for me, things do not seem to be the same. We are rather different one from each other. And actually what characterizes us is being very different one from each other, and wanted to underline more and more our diversity and the fact that, of course, we have individual expectations from democracy and from politicians. Therefore, politics needs to change. And of course, I often speak about the need to do a custom-made politics, tailor-made politics for each individual, but actually, we need to do more than that. We need to raise enthusiasm. We need to make people believe in something. We need to believe in something to be involved in politics. I do politics because I want to change something. I'm not going to say today what I want to change, but I'm fighting for something. I'm sure you want to fight for something, you fight for something. Someone here just referred to children's rights. Someone else referred to diversity. We want our causes to be outspoken by politicians. We want them to deliver, not simply say the right words. Political correctness is not enough anymore for us, for our generation. We want results, because our generation is in a big hurry. We are hurrying. We want things to move faster, because we can we use the internet and everything moves fast. We can speak on WhatsApp, everything moves fast. We post something on social media, everything moves fast. We want politicians to move fast, not speak and come up every 4 or 5 years to us and tell us what they did. It's not enough. We want them to do immediately what they promised. We vote for them, next day they have to deliver. And I don't find anything bad about that. The only thing bad about that is that politicians, even me, have not learned that faster. Have not learned that we have to deliver faster what is expected from us. Hopefully, some of you here from the School of Democracies that I met in the last editions, that I attended as well, will become active politicians and will start delivering faster what our generation expects us to do. So my call to you is really participate and invite others to participate at the political life or the decision-making life, because we need more people to get involved. Without involvement, change will not happen. So we have to repeat this call more and more in order to make young people participate to politics and to the decision-making process. It's not easy. It maybe can be dull. It may be not interesting for some, but it's up to us, as maybe people that are more interested, to promote this call. And I'm also going to refer to, to what I said at the beginning, listening to each other, speaking to each other. And of course, the fact that we need to acknowledge that there is a big part of our population across Europe that maybe do not want change. Maybe they disagree with Europe. Maybe they do not have enough information. Maybe they do not understand how democracy works. Maybe they do not understand the values that we promote. We have such people. But what we should not do is that we should not ignore them. And just to speak frankly, recently in Romania, 3 million people signed the call, the request, the legal request to launch a referendum to define marriage and say that marriage is between a man and a woman. It's 3 million people, 15% of the population. Saying that they are bad is not something that we have to do. Stigmatizing them is not something that we have to do. Speaking with them is something that we have to do. Explaining to them why this is not needed, why we should be tolerant, why we should promote diversity, why everyone should have benefit from same rights. This is something that we need to do. And it's not something easy. Me, as a progressive politician, I started doing so a long time ago, when Rainbow Rose did not exist. In 2005, I spoke that in a party congress, and it wasn't easy. I spoke about that in 2008 in my campaign, where I had LGBTI people campaigning with me in my constituency. Of course, I was not supporting in what I was doing. So if you want to support making a change in countries where values may be more conservative, start getting involved there in making the call, in promoting what we believe, because it's not so easy to go in rural areas to explain to people what is happening in Brussels. It's not so easy to go to a person that is unemployed to tell them that we built the Juncker plan. It's not so easy to go to someone that, of course, doesn't have access to education to speak about Erasmus. It's not easy. If we want to make change, we have to speak with everyone, even those that do not share our values, to tell them why our values, why our policies are the ones that can lead them to success and why they are the best for Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Michele?
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very interesting discussion. First of all, I would like to say something about the question, very concrete, about the Rom minorities and protection of their human rights from the European institution. And I totally agree. What the European institution is not sufficient at all. It's not sufficient at all. Even if in the Council of Europe, I can say that there is a lot of commitment in the Committee of Equality and Non-Discrimination. There are associations trying to find the hate speech and the discrimination. We are now supporting an institute for Rome culture in Berlin with the cooperation with the German government and so on, but it is not enough. In my country, Italy, for example, there is a lot of hate speech, violence and discrimination. And so I don't pretend that you immediately have trust in this kind of institution, but I think that something has been done, and we have to continue. And from your side, even if you do not trust, you have to make any pressure and we will do our best on our side, because without this cooperation between individuals, associations, NGOs, and institutions, it is really difficult or impossible to achieve any meaningful results in the field of human rights. And I would like to add something about education and democracy, which was one of the crucial points. Certainly knowledge is important, but do not think that knowledge is enough. During the history of the 20th century, we have experienced totalitarian regime supported by also very brilliant scholars in Italy or in Germany and so on. So science, knowledge are important but not sufficient. We need an ethical and moral choice to defend and to implement democracy. So schools are important not only for the content of, but also for the practice of debate, of democracy. But then we have always to remind that democracy is not an automatic machinery. We cannot say we push the start button and then democracy goes on. We need a personal commitment of every day. There is no single right in our constitution, in our Human Rights Convention, which has been written without century of struggles and fights of women, workers, and everybody. And the history of human rights is the history of this battle, and we have to continue.
Thank you very much. Barbara.
Thank you. I was asked to answer in 3 minutes, and I got so many questions, so it will be very, very challenging to keep to 3 minutes, but I will try. Before I start with answering the questions and remarks, I would just like to recall that, yes, Malta did enormous progress towards LGBTI rights, though it's still the most oppressive country towards women's rights. And while praising them for being open for LGBT, we shouldn't forget that there is a lot to be done, and if we are working together, we should make this point really strong, that human rights are not the collection, the least you can pick something and fulfill some criteria, losing the others. Human rights are universal and are to everyone, and country that is picking one part of human rights, not accepting the others, is a country that is still violating human rights. But colleague here answered about Poland and this huge division, how to talk to them. It's not about Poland only. The split is all over the world. In every European country, we talk about us and them. Right wing, left wing, traditionalists versus universalists. We should talk about issues, because sometimes we cannot agree on certain topics and certain values, but if we want to make them to be on our side, we should talk on example of issues. For example, domestic violence. No matter if you vote right-wing or conservatives or left-wing, domestic violence is a topic that touches every woman, and it should be one of the core meeting points of the debate, and convincing people to our vision of the world. Equal payment for men and women as well. Human rights as well, and we can convince them without talking, as it was mentioned before, without speaking to each other. We won't succeed. Politicians will be split and divided. This is part of being active in politics as such. Our role is also to make a society less divided, and this is also a huge role of civil society, to work together on issues. European Union, another question of how to promote European Union, whereas it's under constant attack, and we all can criticize European Union. First of all, we need to make European Union to change positively, to lose the arguments against European Union as such. This will happen if progressive politicians will be on the front line. If progressive politicians will be losing elections, their voice won't be heard in the debate of future of European Union. And the other thing is that European Union, a part of free trade possibilities, free movement of people, gave us something that is very unique, gave us peace. And talking about the peace in Europe is a very strong factor in every debate. European Union is the place peace is existing and is one of our values. If we want to promote European Union, and answering last question, which is actually the first one, practical ways of solving, of getting involved. It's very simple. You have to act in the areas that are important to you. Different levels. If you are interested in involving kids in politics, just go to them, go to schools, campaign, find the ways to make them attract to politics, find the ways, find the topics that are important at the moment for them. It can be many things. It can be issues about the legal rights, it can be issues concerning digitalization, access to education, whatever. If we won't be involved, we won't succeed. Sometimes this acting, being involved, is very tiring, very annoying. You are not succeeding, you are failing, no one is listening to you. But after 1 or 2 or 3 months or years, you will see the difference, because people will start to listen to you, start to think why you are asking this, why you are coming every day with such a campaign. Without acting, just asking what to do, we will never succeed. So the practical way, find a topic that interests you and just act. Ask your colleagues to act. And the important thing is that we will overcome the bubble we are sitting in. We are sitting in middle-class bubble, people with good chances of getting education, good chances of getting job. If we want a real change, we have to address to those who are not privileged enough, who are suffering social exclusions. Convince them that you are fighting for them, you are fighting for their right, that women's rights are also right of workers, migrants, every one of us. By doing this in your local environment or in bigger politics, we have to change European law as well, and it will be difficult. But those who don't try never succeed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and I think we have to invite you again to give us and you more time. Yeah, so there will be certain other opportunity where we continue these discussions. Now, Teresa has a very, very difficult task to summarize our discussions. Yeah, so let's try.
Thanks. So yes, dear chair, dear speakers, dear audience, I as a Together ambassador try to summarize the most important points which have been said here at the stage and which you also mentioned. So Josef Weidenholzer started his speech with comparing the EU from 10 years to now, and while the EU had problems 10 years ago, which were economic ones, the cleft between North and South, we are now facing nationalism, and he called it a virus, which was very interesting. This virus is not just in Eastern countries in Europe, but also in Western ones, like for example Austria, what we could saw from the Austria vote last Sunday, right? He also mentioned that human rights are universal, so we don't have human rights just in Austria or in countries. Then our second speaker, Michel Nicoletti, agreed that human rights are universal, and he also reminded us about the Second World War and how Europe was looking then. He also spoke about current problems, the violations of human rights in Poland and Hungary, and also about the fight against corruption, and called it corruption a cancer of democracy, which was very great. He said that democracy is discussion, and he wants liberal democracy, what should be our goal, so not just an institutional one. Then our next speaker, Barbara Nowacka, started her speech with a quote from the Mogherini, who said that loud people, like in Poland, for instance, are often the weak ones. And what the people in Eastern Europe worked the last years, this seems to be getting destroyed by the governments there. She was speaking about the rise of populism, far-right populism, and also about the crisis of values, about the crisis of employment also. And I am, as a Spanish, I'm very concerned about the crisis of employment, unfortunately still. She also said that she feels Polish and European, so both is possible. And she mentioned a very, very interesting question. She asked, does a union really exist? And she talked about women's rights, about the problem with the gender gap, yeah. So then our next speaker, Victor Negrosiu, talked. Okay, so then I think I'm moving to what the audience said.
Yeah.
So
I think there's already people coming in now, so I would refer that there will be a written summary,
okay,
that you have access to this, and then there is more chance to go more in detail, because otherwise it's very unfair for Teresa now to rush through her notes. Yeah? So if you agree with that, I want to thank you very much, especially you, Teresa, and because this was the most difficult task. I want to thank all the speakers and everybody who took part in the discussions. And you can be sure that these questions will be followed up by our political family at various levels in all our member states, over all the generation, over all the different aspects of society. So thank you very much. And now we are waiting for Jeremy Corbyn. Thank you.
sympathy. Compagne e compagni, carissime amiche e carissimi amici, sono particolarmente emozionato e felice nell'annunciarvi che è con noi Jeremy Corbyn. E fra qualche secondo sarà qui, sul palco. Lo ringrazio in particolare a nome di tutti noi per essere qui a Bruxelles anche per porre rimedio ai disastri che sta consumando Theresa May nella gestione del Brexit. Grazie a tutti voi, ieri, oggi, abbiamo dato vita, domani, dopodomani, ad una grande riflessione tra di noi, con la gente, sulle questioni fondamentali che riguardano la vita delle persone, non più discussioni aride sulle cifre, ma un confronto serio sui problemi della vita quotidiana, e abbiamo rilanciato con forza le due grandi questioni che appartengono al futuro del socialismo e del laburismo, del progresso in Europa e nel mondo, la giustizia sociale e la giustizia fiscale. E abbiamo detto e abbiamo dimostrato, voi con noi abbiamo dimostrato che non esiste soltanto la strada del neoliberalismo o del populismo o dell'antieuropeismo, esiste una grande alternativa, esiste l'alternativa socialista, l'alternativa laburista, l'alternativa progressista. Grazie ancora a tutti voi. Jeremy, ti aspetto qui sul palco. Ecco il prossimo primo ministro del Regno Unito.
Thank you very much for that fantastic welcome, and thank you all for coming here today. I want to begin by saying this. Today's Socialists Together conference is a great initiative, and when Gianni invited me to speak, I was delighted to accept. I want to thank you all, participating organisations from many different countries, for being here today, to take part and contribute to the critical debate about the future of socialist and progressive politics and the future of our continent. There can be no doubt the enthusiasm of all of you here today. Our movement, brimming with passion, brimming with ideas. We need, all of us, to seize this opportunity, to channel that enthusiasm, come together, share those ideas, and turn them into action and real change. Since the financial crash, we've seen years of austerity all across Europe. That was a political choice shaped by ideology, which has crippled many parts of our economies, encouraged the dismantling of our public services all across Europe, and driven down wages and living standards. In many countries, welfare and social security have been hit by the full force of the austerity agenda. You see the symptoms of it, of homeless people around railway stations all across Europe. You see the desperation of increasing levels of real poverty in many parts of Europe. It's wrong, it's unnecessary, it's immoral, and it is unacceptable to us as socialists. The targeting of the very poorest in our society. At the same time, the necessity of large-scale and vital public investments has all but been abandoned. As a neoliberal dogma has allowed many of our valuable public assets to be sold cheaply to the benefit of the few at the expense of the many. Beyond Europe's borders, we've seen war and climate change drive the mass displacement of people and forced migration, a refugee crisis on a scale not seen since the Second World War, tearing apart communities and families. That, in turn, is being exploited by some of the most ugly elements in our politics. People who are determined to promote fear and division within our societies. All of this against a backdrop where our world is slipping back towards the threat of global conflict, spurred on by national egotism and neo-imperial ambition, and where human and democratic rights, including freedom of speech, are increasingly coming under pressure on the fringes and even within the borders of the European Union. These are some of the challenges that face us and the people that we represent. For millions of people across our continent, the current system is failing to deliver secure jobs, failing to deliver rising living standards, and failing to deliver a safe and secure future. Instead of seeing the current system and the long-promoted panacea of deregulated markets as a solution to their problems, people across Europe see them as the cause of their problems. People no longer have faith that globalization can bring a future of prosperity and security, or that political business as usual will roll back the rampant growth of inequality. Young people are angry at being forced into debt and insecurity. And let me make this very clear. People of all ages, all backgrounds, and all communities unite together in wanting change in the way our politics is done all across Europe. Yet, since the economic crash and the enforcement of a failed austerity, the people that we represent have too often not associated the left and wider progressive politics with the change that they want. Instead, we've witnessed the opposite. We've seen right-wing, nationalist and racist movements reap the benefits of a broken system. And for many of those people who feel angry, held back and left behind, the voices of those on the extreme right often sound more radical than those on the left. For too long, the most prominent voices in our movement have looked out of touch, too willing to defend the status quo and the established order. In a desperate attempt to defend and protect what is seen as the centre ground in politics, only to find that the centre ground has shifted or was never where the elites claimed it was in the first place. From Donald Trump in the United States, Marine Le Pen in France, or UKIP in Britain, to the very worrying rise of the far right elsewhere in Europe, including most recently in Austria. Our broken system has provided fertile ground for the growth of nationalist and xenophobic politics. Now we all know that their politics of hate, blame, and division are not the answer. But unless we offer a clear and radical alternative of credible solutions to the problems people face, unless we offer a chance to change the broken system, unless we offer hope of a more equitable and prosperous future, we are clearing the path for the extreme right to make even more far-reaching inroads into our communities, and their message of fear and division to become the political mainstream of our discourse. But we can offer a radical alternative. We have the ideas to make progressive politics the dominant force of this century. But if we don't get our message right, don't stand up for our core beliefs, and we don't represent change, we will founder and stagnate. For a start, the neoliberal economic model is broken. It doesn't work for most people. Inequality and low taxes for the richest are hurting our people and harming the economy, as even the International Monetary Fund now acknowledges. That's why our thinking can and must become the new mainstream. As we develop a new consensus of how to run an economy for the many, not the few. That rewards the real wealth creators. That means all of us, not the wealth extractors. We must build an economy fit for the 21st century, with a democratic state at its heart that's not afraid to act when something goes wrong, but also to shape and drive innovation and investment in the cutting-edge technologies of the future. This new consensus includes not only regulation, but also new forms of public, cooperative and social ownership. It should be a government's duty to make sure that regulation keeps pace with an ever-changing world. And for too long, calls for sensible and necessary regulation of working conditions and employment standards across Europe have been ignored, allowing wages to be held down and fueling the resentment of many held back and neglected by the existing system. We cannot continue to make these mistakes. The technology of the digital age offers us an opportunity to empower workers and to cooperate on a scale not possible before. But it's also enabled a more exploitive form of capitalism to emerge. Look at Uber, Deliveroo, look at Amazon, and look at others. The platforms these companies use are the technologies of the future. But too often, their business models depend not on technological advantage, but on establishing an effective monopoly in their market and using that monopoly to drive down wages and working conditions to or even through the floor. Socialists must rise to this challenge for the future and radically rethink how to shape the development of our economies and societies over the next generation. Using the power of new technology to make our economy work for the many, not the few. And while the economic downturn takes hold, we must never forget our responsibilities in tackling climate change and finding solutions to the impact of global warming. It is shameful that the United States President wants to pull out of the Paris Climate Change Agreement with the future of our planet at stake. We, as socialists, should be the loudest voices in condemning such myopic and potentially catastrophic acts. We must also think collectively about how we address other global challenges. Never has the time been more important to restate our commitment to the United Nations Charter, the third clause of which states its aim is to achieve international cooperation in solving international problems. With the problems facing us of nuclear proliferation, climate change, the humanitarian crises of Syria, Yemen, and of the Rohingya people in Myanmar, a global agenda driven by socialist principles is more necessary now than it has ever been in our history. Whether it's the belligerence and provocation of Donald Trump or Kim Jong-un, what's evidently essential is calm, rational dialogue and cooperation. And across the world, our movement must play a huge role as a spur to development, empowering women, bringing communities together. In a world of aggressive reaction and macho posturing, let us, as socialists, be the voice of diplomacy, the voice of peace. And as Europe continues to be swept up in an ongoing migration and refugee crisis, all socialists must stand together in support of a humane and collective response to help those people who've been made victims of war and climate change. Our whole DNA, our whole well-being is one of a humanitarian and decent response, and recognising that people are victims of a situation not of their own making and want to contribute to our world just like we all do. Sometimes it seems hard to do these things, but it must be the left, the socialists, that show leadership in the refugee crisis. There are still people in the Mediterranean fleeing war and persecution, many from North Africa as well as from the wider Middle East. We need a progressive and coherent, joined-up approach. This includes a fair sharing system and legal pathways of admission. And our response must be matched by broader efforts by all concerned to address the root causes behind the migration pressures, create people better protection whilst they're in transit, address smuggling and trafficking. Individual countries cannot be left to solve this crisis alone. I want to pay tribute to the outstanding work of anti-racist and peace movements all across Europe. Friends, we must defend human rights, democracy, and social justice within our borders. That is what we as socialists must do. The attack on freedom of speech and on academics in some parts of Europe should not and cannot ever be tolerated. We cannot silence voices of reason by irrational acts by any state. Europe is the birthplace of the Enlightenment, of democracy, the labour movement, and socialism. But it's also been the cradle of racist colonialism, fascism, the slave trade, and the most terrible crimes in human history. The struggle for the best of Europe and its progressive traditions against that other European legacy must be vigilant and must be unending. Let's not forget, these freedoms are central to all of us. We've also been proud to stand up to those breaches when they occur outside the European Union. We must be doubly determined to stand up to abuses when they happen inside our own borders. The issue of Brexit is obviously a huge one in Britain. Let me be clear. The British Labour Party does not see anyone in Europe as an enemy. We see people across Europe as friends. You're our colleagues, our partners, our comrades, and our friends. Our commitment is clear. We must and will respect the result of the EU referendum, but at the same time build a new, close and cooperative relationship with our fellow Europeans based on our common interests. We are internationalists. So, I urge all leaders on all sides, the UK and the UK, the UK and the European Union must take the steps together. There is no room and no need for insults or divisive posturing. It is our responsibility to build a relationship that will continue to thrive for generations to come, and we in the Labour Party are determined to achieve that. To all European Union nationals who live and work and contribute to British society, we thank you. We thank you for being our friends, our colleagues and neighbours. And we will do all we can to make sure you will continue to be welcome and continue to call Britain your home. In the referendum, our party, the Labour Party, campaigned to remain and reform. And that call for reform of European Union institutions and rules in the interest of the many is echoed by many friends and allies across Europe. We will resist any attempt by British Conservatives to use Brexit to try and create any kind of deregulated tax haven off the shores of Europe. That is not on our agenda. A deal that works for us, all of us, is essential both for Britain and the whole of Europe. We will continue to work with you and many others across Europe. And of course, Europe is bigger than just the European Union on climate change, challenging the grip of corporate power and many other issues, inside or outside the EU. Progressive advances in every part of our continent, strengthen us all. Many establishment commentators have been determined to write the left off, to write socialism out of the agenda. In Britain, we were told we had no chance. No chance, we were told, just before the recent general election. And although we did not quite win the election, I think you would agree we comprehensively proved our critics wrong. We delivered the largest increase in Labour's votes since 1945, increasing our vote by 3 million between 2015 and 2017. We showed that with a combination of the enthusiasm of on-the-ground campaigning, of street meetings, of rallies, of bringing people together of all ages, all backgrounds, all communities, using the cutting edge of social media, it is possible to mobilize millions of people around a radical, transformational, socialist agenda of what the future could look like. It is, my friends, possible to win those arguments if you engage with them and put them out there, and we will continue to do that. If our message is bold and our message is radical, if we listen to what the majority actually want, we will prove the elites and their pundits wrong, that we in this movement have the enthusiasm, the ability and the ideas to change this world. But I know we can only do it when we work together. Work together in our own countries, work together across national borders, work together internationally. That surely is what makes us socialists in the first place. The sharing of wealth, the sharing of ideas, and that fundamental belief that every human being has a right to a decent and reasonable life. Every child has a right to be able to achieve the fullest potential they can. The injustice, the unfairness, and the inequality of so many of the current systems leave millions left behind, leave millions desperate and angry, and lead to a divided and unhealthy society. Working together, maintaining those values, using every technique we can to campaign on them, we challenge inequality and injustice wherever it is. working together, we can achieve that change and achieve that better world. We have so many things that unite us across national borders, that desire and that thirst for change. And you know what? Together, working together, we can challenge inequality and injustice, achieve that better world that we all so desperately want and strive for. And to me, it's a real pleasure and a real honour to be invited by Gianni to come here today and share a few thoughts with you on behalf of the Labour movement in Britain. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Hello. I'm just going to do a bit of moderating with you of the Q&A. First of all, it was very interesting to see the tweets coming in because you were referred to as...
I can't see any.
I know, but shall I tell you how you were referred to? Once as Jezza. I don't know if that was a person in the room. Who did the tweet about Jezza and Islington North? And then we also had... was it you there? Okay, and we also had that you were the absolute boy as well. Who tweeted the absolute boy? Yes. It's you. He's 19, but he says people think he's 35 because of the beard. But we had that whole conversation.
But he's got a brilliant beard. Well done. Thank you so much. Beards of the world unite. You've nothing to lose but your hair.
So we have about, I think, 10, 15 minutes. Yeah. We're going to take 3 questions at a time. Sure. Now, what I'm going to say to the room, and don't shoot the messenger, is we are looking for questions not for people for whom hardcore politics is their real day job, and not from the media on this occasion. We're going to look further afield at the wider participants in the room, okay? So, a gentleman here will take a question from you, and then let's just have a look. I think somebody's going to try not to throw that at your head. Have a look at that coming now, sir, please. Oh, it always terrifies me. Right, one there. Let's just see. Is there another question? Another question? Are you a wider participant? Yes, good, great. So we chuck to this gentleman, and should we have a lady? Go on, chuck to the... There's a lady there with long hair. Go on, we got a lady there. Oh, God, that's a long way to throw.
Is this sort of cricket or baseball practice or something?
Know.
It's wonderful.
Maybe throw from the front, if you could. Come and throw. You're going to do a better job, and you don't risk injuring her. Now, while we do the throw, we can hear from... Go on, you can start us off, my dear, actually. Let's hear... No, ladies and gents, you know the drill. Nice and short, please. Thank you. Do you want to start us off?
Yes.
And hold it nice and high so we can hear you and so can the interpreters.
Gianni Pittella actually announced you as the new Prime Minister for UK. So we would like to hear from you when you will become the new Prime Minister.
Okay. All right.
Do you think that you will try to reintegrate UK in the EU?
Okay. Thank you for those. Okay, where is our other blue box gentleman? Yes, do you want to stand and say who you are, please? Just hold it. No, just the top. Oh, hello, yours isn't working. Can you take the ladies? Go on, chuck it. Let's do more throwing. Perfect.
Hello. Hi, my name's Pranav and I'm from India. I absolutely love you, Jeremy. My question is that, do you think it's actually possible to regulate the sharing economy? I mean, when we say that it's high time that Uber drivers sort of own Uber, is that possible? And is that, can we envisage a future where the drivers of Uber can reinvest their profits and build a sustainable company that looks after their interests? How do we do that?
Okay, thank you. Good question. Thank you very much. And we had a third question there from the gentleman here. Yes, please stand and let us know who you are. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Behan from the last year in the secondary school, Mechtaalg Atheneum Woluwe in St. Peter's Woluwe in Brussels. I have a question for you. What is your stance and what is your opinion on what are the negative and positive consequences for England leaving from the UK leaving from the EU for Saudi Arabia, Russia, and the United States? Okay.
Should we take those three first? Are we happy to? Okay, let's explore those three in whichever. So we had two questions about the UK and the EU there. When are you going to become Prime Minister? That was the first one. And also, is it possible to regulate the sharing economy? And then we had a look at what happens with the UK and the EU and where will the UK be going? Is it going to be looking at Saudi Arabia, at Russia and the USA, and what are the implications of that?
We fought the general election campaign from a difficult start. Everybody acknowledges that. And we gained a great deal of support during the campaign because we challenged the status quo and we challenged the politics of austerity and the politics of choice, which is to essentially cut public spending, roll back the state, and lead to greater levels of inequality. And we gained a great deal of support and a great deal of unity. We didn't do that by conceding ground to the right in politics. We did that by sticking to the principles on which our party and all of our parties were founded, of one of socialism and social justice. The referendum happened in Britain in 2016. We campaigned to remain and reform, and there was a vote taken, as you well know, which resulted in Britain voting to leave the European Union. There is an opportunity and a number of models here in operation. One is the right of the Conservative Party essentially want to crash out of Europe with no agreement and no deal at all, and set up some kind of tax haven on the shores of Europe that would undermine all the principles of common labour conditions and environmental protection and consumer rights across Europe. Or there is the alternative view that we would negotiate to ensure that we have a good trade arrangement with tariff-free access to European markets, and at the same time we legislate specifically in Britain, one, to guarantee European Union nationals full rights of residence and family reunion in Britain. Secondly, that we protect labour rights, particularly 4 weeks holiday, as well as paternity and maternity leave. And we regulate to protect all the environment conditions. And we continue in the future not to undermine Europe in any other way, because we want to work with Europe in that sense. But there was a referendum. We have to respect that result. We would want to remain partners and members of many of the European agencies, and crucially, we would maintain absolutely membership of the Council of Europe, of course, but also of the European Court of Human Rights, the European Convention of Human Rights, and the universal freedoms that are guaranteed across Europe, because those were hard fought for by many people in the aftermath of the Second World War and since then. And I'm one who is very committed to a human rights agenda, not just within our continent, but in our relations with the rest of the world. And you asked those questions about relations with other countries. You mentioned, for example, Saudi Arabia, you mentioned Russia, you mentioned the USA. We would obviously want to have good relations with people. I want there to be a reduction in tensions between Europe and Russia, at the same time as I also want to stand up for human rights within Russia, as I would with any other country. They are, after all, members of the Council of Europe. But we have to look to a world where we develop an agenda for peace and cooperation. And so the proposal of the Trump administration in the USA to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal is, I think, very retrograde and very dangerous. That deal was achieved to bring about a de-escalation of tensions and also to encourage an improvement of human rights in Iran. I've been to Iran and taken part in many of those discussions. I don't want us to be walking away from those agreements. I want us to be walking towards better relations and better agreements that reduces tensions around the world, including activities within the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, as well as the obviously within the UN itself. The question was raised on Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is obviously a powerful country, obviously a very rich country. I cannot be the only person in this wonderful hall that is appalled by the weapons that are being used to bomb people in Yemen at the present time. And Emily Thornberry, who is our Shadow Foreign Secretary, has made this very, very clear that we would want a suspension of arms sales to Saudi Arabia whilst they continue the bombing and the occupation of Yemen. The situation politically in Britain is one where the government has got a very strange tactic now of trying not to vote in Parliament whenever we put proposals up. This is only 4 months after an election result was achieved in which they emerged as the largest party, but not in overall control. We, the Labour Party's membership is now up to 575,000 across the whole of the UK. We're campaigning all over the country all the time, and on the last National Campaigning Day we had 450 simultaneous events all over the country. The Labour Party is bigger than it's been for many, many years, probably in all of my lifetime, more active than it's ever been. Our conference was the biggest we've ever held. We're a party of principles, we're a party of determination, we're a party of internationalism. We want to work with all of you to achieve a peaceful, just and more equitable world. Those are the Labour values that I am proud to represent as the party leader.
To come back on the regulation of Uber?
Oh, sorry, and on the question of the regulations, thank you for your question. The points I was making in my contribution was that the technology used by Uber, by Amazon, by Deliveroo and other such companies is actually very brilliant and very clever technology. Technological developments ought to be things that benefit all of us. If you think of the broad sweep of history, industrialization across Europe led to the most grotesque levels of inequality and eventually led to the growth of trade unions and the labour movement to try and bring about a more socialist and a better world. We're now into a new industrial revolution with very high technology systems being introduced all over the world. High technology should not be the enemy of people, it should be their friend. But if it's used as a way of reducing wages, reducing living standards, removing workers' rights and conditions, then obviously everyone's going to be opposed to it. What we need is governments being prepared to intervene and challenge those companies to employ people properly, and that those technologies should be there for the benefit of all, not for the enormous profitability of a very small number of people. This is actually one of the biggest challenges that we as socialists face all over the world. Using technology for the benefit of all, for shorter working week, for greater leisure time, for more equitable distribution of wealth or money, or are we going to stand aside, allow the deregulators to win and allow inequality and poverty to follow as a result of it? I know which side I'm on. I know which side you're on in that debate.
Thank you. Okay, I need to park it. I've been instructed. Thank you very much, and thank you for answering so comprehensively. Can you please stay on the stage with me, because I need to orchestrate. Look behind you. It's been very carefully done. For goodness sake, I feel for you if you don't stand on your right spot. It's going to be an interesting musical chairs here without the chairs.
It looks like a Formula One grid, actually.
Does it? Look, look, you're there. Anyway, look, you're there. So, can I please call up the leaders, the S&D bureau members, the presidents of the Together Partners, thank you, and the Together ambassadors. You know who you are. Could you all kindly come up on stage and join Jeremy Corbyn or Jezza or the Absolute Boy for a family photo, please? We're going to lose the podium. That's going to be interesting. Voila. Be careful. Oh. You actually turned up on time today, your contributions to the workshops. Thank you so much to the incredibly hard-working interpreters. I don't know how they do it. Thanks to the technicians. Thanks to the very hard organising team. There were some comms people working very hard, and now I must release you all. You have places to go. Thank you, Jeremy Corbyn, for turning up today and addressing us with such passion. Thank you. Round of applause.